Your body language says it all.
May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so I really wanted to dedicate this episode to mental health and mental wellness, and talking about that in relationship to being in a bigger body. And I want to say off the top, obviously none of us are healthcare professionals. We're just big girls with lived experience. So for those watching, I really want to encourage you to take comfort and solace in this, but also to seek the appropriate help. So to start off, and I know this is a loaded question these days, but how are you? I'll start. Not great. I've always thought this whole mental health, mental wellness thing was a roller coaster, but never have I experienced such a bumpy one in the last little bit. So I certainly am having to lean into some of the things that I talk about for myself in a way that I haven't had to in a long time. So I'm curious if anyone else is feeling that way.
I've really noticed in the last couple weeks that I've really been struggling myself. I've struggled with mental illness my whole life. Went through a diagnosis of bipolar disorder a couple years ago, about 2 years ago. And, up to that point, because I was struggling so much, I was at home all the time. And that's where my safe space was. So for the longest time that we've been going through the pandemic, kind of felt like I've been in my element until I would say this last month. And it's really been hard. And even this week on Tuesday, I just had a terrible day and had to take half the day off of work because I was just not in it. So yes, to your question, I have been struggling, but I just kind of take it day by day and do what I can in those moments to just lean into those feelings, as hard as that is.
Before COVID, I had a boyfriend in Australia, didn't work. And I was actually on my way to Canada to go home for a family vacation. And I did a stopover in LA, signed with a new agency, amazing things were happening. And then I had to come home for COVID. And when that happened, it was like I was on this huge high and then I just hit a massive low. And at that time, I had been struggling with my bulimia, which I had since I was about 17 years old. It's just been a little roller coaster.
You have days in and out. Usually I'm okay, but what I find a good thing to do is to stay off social media. I've had perfectly good days, happy days ruined by going on social media. I think we're human, right? So as much as we try and as much as we preach to other people to not compare, there are times that you can go on social media and you can compare yourself to others and you can work up a whole story in your head how everybody else is doing perfectly great and everybody else is soaring in life and everybody's having a grand old time and you're the only one who's not doing well. Even though I intellectually know that social media is not necessarily all real, you still get consumed with it. You still fall into that trap.
To counter some of that, why don't we each say something that we do practically to buoy you along, right? Because even though we're struggling, look at us. We're here. We're on a Zoom. We have some eyelash on. Like we're we're
like together. We're together.
Sometimes a lot of the times you're telling yourself a story. You're telling yourself something that's not necessarily the truth. And even though you're feeling sad, you're feeling all those things, a lot of the times we're feeling sad because we're telling ourselves a story that we're bad, we're this, we're that, and we're not. And we have to remember we're not, and you have to also remember you're not alone. Now, if it's obviously something that you need medication for, that's a different conversation. Mm-hmm. But if it's just those days where you're just feeling sad, you're feeling bad about yourself, remember that what you're telling yourself isn't necessarily the truth.
And in the same way that we tell ourselves lies that are negative and we believe them, why not tell ourselves some positive lies?
Why not? Whatever gets you through.
Exactly. Danielle, I know you spoke of your diagnosis, and obviously that is something that you're open about and, open about talking about medication. I so appreciate that in your social platform.
There's been two pieces of the puzzle for me. The first piece is lots and lots of counseling. I've been doing it for a couple of years now. It has honestly saved my life, and the medication as well. Those two together have really put me in a place where, I can do things like this. It could be something as, tricky as getting yourself in therapy and really working and navigating through those things, or just, getting a Diet Coke if you need a Diet Coke, or snuggling with your puppy, or doing what you need to do just to get through those moments, and to get on to the next.
Crispy Diet Coke.
Crispy Diet Coke.
See, I talk to myself a lot. I even sometimes what I started doing is, even when something good happens, like today, for instance, I got my passport and I got in my car after and I was like, good for you. You got up this morning, you were out the door, now you got your passport. Like, the world is in your hands. You got this. And then when I'm having a bad moment, I'll just tell myself, like, it's okay. Just put your feet on the floor. Just try your best. And I just speak out loud, because I find, like, I read this quote and it was something about, treat yourself the way you would treat your best friend. And I thought about that and I was like, I'm so hard on myself all the time. My thoughts are so negative towards myself lately. So I've been kind of treating myself like my own best friend and really just motivating myself verbally and speaking out loud.
Tracy, I spoke with you before we chatted here today as well, because I didn't think we could have this discussion about mental health, especially given this year, without talking about race.
I'll be honest, it's nothing new to people of color. This is something we've always dealt with. We've always talked in private about, kind of consoled each other in private about. Now everybody wants us to speak on it and talk about it, and it became exhausting. Mm-hmm. It became tiring. Always having to explain, and because people wanted to suddenly learn what have you been feeling all along? How come you've never said this? And I'm like, it was never welcomed. And now it's being welcomed. So you're happy the conversation is happening, but at the same time, you're exhausted, and you also feel pressure that you have to represent everybody in your answers. And people of color are not a monolith. We don't all agree on everything. We don't walk in lockstep on everything. So you have that pressure of trying to represent them, but at the same time, this is your chance to say things that you felt you couldn't say all along.
And do you think too, and everybody weigh in on this, the access, let's talk about access to mental health, because I think there are stigmas that people of color are dealing with. There are stigmas that people in bigger bodies are dealing with in terms of access to mental health, in terms of our own internalized feelings of being deserving of said help.
I feel like this stigma is, especially when you have an eating disorder. I feel like for me, even calling my doctor, she said, well, there's only teenage clinics around. Well, you're in your 30s, you shouldn't be dealing with this, is what my doctor told me. And I said, well, I am still dealing with this, and I shouldn't have to sit in a room with a bunch of 15-year-olds who aren't on the same level as me at all. Mm-hmm. And I found it really hard to get the help that I needed in terms of my eating disorder, because at my age, I'm not supposed to have one. And I felt really discouraged, because I was really genuinely struggling and trying to put my hand up, and I felt like I didn't have the professional help in that regard.
This is the kind of stuff we need to bring to light, right? Because, I mean, to piggyback that a little bit, and this isn't really something I've ever shared before, but I struggled with an eating disorder and sought help for it. And it wasn't until I was watching the Marilyn Dennis show, I'm not kidding you, on Bell Let's Talk Day, as someone who contributes to her show, they said, next up, we're going to have somebody on talking about eating disorders. And, and I was like, on Bell Let's Talk Day? I was like, wait a second. And then I had this whole drop down going of like, oh, I had a mental illness. Mm-hmm. And it's so, it's wild for me to even sort of articulate this right now, but it wasn't until that moment that I associated the gravity of what I went through with what I think of as the gravity and the respect that is due to mental illness.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done that yet. And I think that speaks to your point, Chris, because I think we have this idea around body and mind connection that it can kind of be solved through yoga or an affirmation. And I realize I have affirmation cards available, but I'm saying, I think we think it potentially could be solved as some sort of rejection to diet culture or something. And we got to get cool about it, that it's not. It is actually the deadliest mental illness, if I believe I'm correct on those facts. Danielle, I know you speak to this a lot. I'll let you share what you feel comfortable sharing, but I appreciate that you share the process of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you share the process of what you're going through and your struggle when it comes specifically to an eating disorder, I had never seen that before. And I'll get emotional thinking about it, but I commend your decision to share that, because it's hard and ugly, and thank you.
You know what I think it makes it so hard is that as somebody in a larger body, I go to the doctor and I say, I'm having this problem with eating. And they say, really the answer is weight loss. Well, you need to lose weight. You need to lose weight. Like for me, what I share is throughout this and, my whole life been dealing with binge eating. And something that I've recently shared was that I've been binge eating alone at night lately. And I'll be honest, when it comes to talking to my doctor, my counselor about that, it is a conversation that I do not have with them, because I am afraid that I'm just going to be looked past because I don't look a certain way. For me, it's a really hard subject, but I think it's so important to share, because I find the more I share, I'm getting people that are reaching out to me and saying, oh my gosh, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going through the same thing. And really knowing that I'm not alone in those things has more healing power for me than I ever expected.
I've never been to therapy, so I can't speak to an experience of being to therapy, but I can speak to the fact that there's definitely a stigma when it comes to therapy, especially with people of color. And also even speak to what Chris said and piggyback on what she said about age. I think it's a combination of color and age. If you're a certain age or you're a certain color, it's almost like you're perceived as you're mentally weak if you need someone to speak to, or you need counseling. Culturally, you're just considered weak, so people hide it, or they just endure going through a lot of turmoil instead of just finding therapy. So I know it's slowly changing, because I do know people in my life who are people of color who have sought out therapy, but they still kind of say it real quiet and in dark corners, and because there's that stigma, that shame. We need to change the conversation and not make people feel like if they need to go speak to somebody that they're weak-minded and that they're not smart enough to figure out their life.
So, lightning round, mood boost edition, okay? Because I think it's important that we share our struggle, but I also ask the three of you to be here today because I look to you so much on socials and just like in life and online and on TV and, in big campaigns, and to just be those people that I want to feel good by watching. And so I want to make sure that we put some of that stuff out into the world as well. Ready? Okay. Best song.
State of Grace by Taylor Swift.
Beautiful by Christina Aguilera.
Rock Me Amadeus. I don't know why, but I love singing that song.
Okay. Best podcast.
My Favorite Murder. I know.
I don't have one. Sorry.
Podcast. That's okay. You don't need to. You just listen to yourself. Okay.
This app, it's called Sanity and Self, and on there's a range of just different inspiring, empowering podcasts.
Okay. Best Instagram account.
Oh, right now I really like Coach Carrie.
Oh, I love her.
My fellow Torian, Lizzo.
I started following Madonna, and her stuff, she's so cool.
Piece of clothing for a mood boost.
Baggy t-shirt or baggy sweatshirt.
Love.
She kind of stole my answer, Danielle, because
Sorry.
I have like an off-the-shoulder sweater that's like a mustard color that I just love. Like whenever I just give a little shoulder, it makes me feel, makes me feel cute.
Floral kimonos. They're just flowy and kind of effortless.
Your best food to comfort food or mood boost food?
I honestly was going to say chicken nuggets because that's my thing is I love chicken nuggets.
French fries, chocolate, and coffee. I can't pick one of those.
Ooh.
Mine's a hard shell taco, and it has to be hard shell. Please, I've had these arguments with people, soft shell versus hard shell. Soft shell to me is a waste of time. It's mushy. Please don't put that in front of me. I don't like it. I'm not into it. It actually ruins my day.
I know the quote of this episode. It's Tracy likes it hard.
Sign off on that. I sign off on that. Yes.